And we're back, and we are joined now by Rob Wilson, Vice President of Blazer Capital Management. Welcome to the program. I said Dr. Anthony Davis would be here, but he hasn't arrived yet. If he gets here, he will join us in the discussion. All right, the economy is going to be a real problem for the sitting president, isn't it, Rob?
It is. I mean, and unfortunately for all of us, change hasn't happened as quickly as we would hope. But even the change that we thought we were voting for in 2008, if people thought that change was going to be fun and it was going to feel good, change isn't fun and it doesn't feel good. Ask anybody that's tried to lose 15 pounds if it feels good and it doesn't hurt. So things are going to take some time, and these are shots that the president is going to have to take.
So when Mr. Romney and Mr. Ryan say that they have a better plan, do you think that that's going to resonate with the voters?
I don't know if it's going to resonate if you don't give anyone details. I mean, I watched the RNC more than I watched the Democratic National Convention, because in a situation like this, you want to hear what the challengers have to say and if they can do something differently. And Governor Romney gets up there and says he's got a plan to create 12 million jobs. Now, the economy would have to average 250,000 jobs a month for the next 4 years to add 12 million jobs in his first term. He didn't really explain, as far as I could understand or hear, how he intended to do that.
So do you think that that's a hollow promise?
It could be. I'm hoping that I hope that happens. We all hope that happens. I'd love to hear the details on how he's going to do it, and I just don't think that that's happened yet.
Well, what does the economy need? You're part of capital management. You see where money is moved and how it creates jobs. The Republicans make the argument that the people with the money are the ones who create the jobs. First of all, is that true?
Well, sure. It's true that folks that own businesses have to hire people, and that creates jobs. But my assertion is that people will create jobs when they feel like they can make more money. If there are going to be more sales out there and they can't capture those sales with the workforce that they have, they will hire people. But the problem is, see, our economy has been basically built on a lot of people buying things that they don't need. So the new iPhone 5 is going to be announced today by Apple, and you're going to see lines around the corners when it actually hits the shelves for people to go out and buy those things. That's what our economy has been built on. But unfortunately, in this recession, you've got the housing bubble that burst, so people don't have access to home equity, right? People were tapping their home equity to buy things that they didn't need. They can't do that anymore. People were tapping credit cards to buy things that they didn't need. Now that access to credit has been cut off. So if we're not buying things that we don't need right now, unfortunately, people I don't think are going to hire because the sales aren't there.
Look, I've heard a number of people say this, that the people you're talking about, whether they need it or not, are the ones who keep the economy going. They're buying things from cars to refrigerators to houses to vacuum cleaners to anything else. And whether they need them or not, they're the ones who spend the money that keeps it going. Many people and pundits say we would have been a lot better off rather than bailing out Wall Street and guys like you, forgive me, capital management guys. I know you weren't in this, so but it's the same field, okay? So please don't take it personally. Bailing out guys like you, we could have given each and every individual American $50,000 to $100,000, and they would have gone out immediately and maybe bought some things that they did not need, but it would have stimulated the economy. It would have stimulated automobiles. You wouldn't need a bailout to them, because these people would have gone out and bought a new car, a refrigerator, a vacuum cleaner, or something else.
Well, think about what happens if you do that. It's really the same consequences if you bail out Wall Street and if you individually bail out people that way. If everybody is rushing out,
people get a little money out of it and a little bit.
But if everybody's rushing out to go buy, you know, BMWs, the cost of those BMWs are going to go up, and so the rise in prices could potentially offset the fact that you've put money in people's pockets like that. So what you want to do is you want to have people be able to earn that money so that they can go spend it. And the thing that disappoints me the most is that I don't think that you can talk about the jobs without simultaneously talking about education. And you mentioned in your monologue about the Chicago School District going on strike. And I think the real argument that we need to be having is about the students' achievement. The problem is that we're spending a lot to educate these children in high school, and we're not teaching them to do anything. So the fact is, yeah, we've preaching now you've got to go to college because you don't have any skills when you graduate high school. But there are jobs right now that high school graduates could get for high-tech auto mechanics, but we don't teach that in school. They're not prepared to take those jobs, so they've got to go take on student debt to go try to actually get some skills to allow them to earn some money. I think that's the argument that we should be having.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I'd hope that those young people would go out and buy Chevys and Fords and Chryslers and not BMWs.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
Secondly, but again, you never know, right? Somebody might want a 3 Series. Who knows? The second part of that is you talk about education, and that's part of the problem too. I have seen more for-profit schools prop up that will teach you how to be a medical hygienist, a cook, or almost anything else. And I don't know if they're needed. And plus, most of these schools have more people recruiting people than they do in placement, trying to get them jobs once they've finished. And nobody looks at that, but we're talking about jobs. And we talk about college graduates, too, who are graduating with $100,000 in debt and can't find a job in the field that they've worked in, even if it's something really competitive like engineering.
That's true, but you know what? The unemployment rate in technical jobs right now is 4%. Half of what the entire country is facing. So if you really get skills into the hands of these individuals, I think that they can take these jobs and they can make a perfectly good salary. Your point about the for-profit schools, I mean, they're a joke. And the fact that they can get federal funding for student loans.
Nobody sees that as a sign of welfare for these very well-off people who run these schools.
I tell you what, there is a movement right now and pushback against these schools. I know some attorneys out there, and won't name any names, of course, but there is some movement and pushback against these schools who are artificially inflating jobs numbers and trying to give these kids hopes of what the job situation is going to look like once they graduate. And they include things like, if a kid graduates from these schools and they go work at McDonald's, well, they're hired, but of course that's not what they went there to go do, and that salary isn't going to help them pay those loans back. So I think there is a movement against your, I won't name the schools in general specifically, but look, it's going away.
I'm glad to hear that movement is developing, but the other part of this happens to be about getting a job that you're required, that you're getting skilled and you can pay your mortgage with. What do you recommend are the entry levels that people might go into so that they can get these kinds of jobs? Because there's all sorts of pushback on everybody from public unions like teachers and firefighters and even police officers to try to get them to give back money. I don't know who's going to be earning a decent wage where they can pay for a Chevy, a Ford, let alone a BMW these days.
That's true. Maybe I'm a little biased because my undergraduate degree is in engineering, and so I'm always going to be a techie guy. And so I think that if you can equip these students with the ability to take technical jobs, and it's not, you don't have to be an astrophysicist or something like that. Again, I point back to these automotive jobs, because of these vehicles are much more electronic and high tech now. You need a laptop more to fix a car, more so than you need to know how to replace a carburetor. So there's high-tech jobs that you can do that are very accessible, that you can learn these skills in high school if we would take more time to teach actual skills. Because coming out and being able to read a newspaper is essential, but you've got to have some real skills if somebody's going to hire you.
The Republicans make what I call a real common sense argument about the economy, that you can't spend, and I think this appeals to almost everybody who's tried to run a household. You can't spend more money than you take in, and anybody who's tried to do that in their own household says that makes sense. Do you think that appeal is going to help them win votes in this next presidential election as they appeal on these economic issues?
That's a very valid point. That is absolutely a very valid point. The deficit is a huge problem that we've got to face. I mean, Moody's right now is talking about downgrading the U.S. credit rating again because the politicians just can't get themselves together. But what I find interesting is that on the one hand, we're talking about government spending less and reducing the deficit, which absolutely has to be done. At the very same time, we really want households to go out and spend more money because the consumer is 70% of the economy, but the consumer is actually in the same dire straits that the country is. Credit card debt and student loan debt at an all-time high. It's actually a good thing that people are saving money and paying down debt. And so this is why we're in the situation that we're in. It's painful when people aren't spending money on things that they don't need. They're paying down their own debt. They're trying to get their own financial house in order. That, while good for individuals, is not good for the overall economy.
When it comes to the overall economy, should the U.S. Congress do something about these usurious rates that they're charging for these credit cards that you're talking about?
You know what? There has been a lot of credit card reform. I think the credit card companies obviously have a right to make money as well, right? And
but
individuals,
there have been laws against usury that come from biblical days. Everybody, anywhere in recorded history, that's one of the first things that they talk about, how much you should charge in order to lend money. Right now, these rates are up to 20-some, almost 30% for some credit, extension of credit. It's ridiculous.
But no
especially when the credit lending to these banks is what, 0, 1%?
Well, you make a good point in that interest rates are so low on that side, and they're 30% on the individual side.
And that's hurting that person you talked about, that consumer that drives the economy.
It is, but we shouldn't be trying to live on credit cards. If you can't pay it in cash, maybe you don't need to buy it. This is one thing that's gotten households in trouble before: tapping home equity, tapping credit cards. That's just not a good tool for your financial life. So no one's forcing individuals to go and sign up for these credit cards. And if more people didn't, and more people didn't accept that as a part of their financial plan, the rates would have to come down.
Rob, I have to tell you, man, I'm in the grocery store. I do the shopping in my family. I see people in front of me paying for groceries on credit.
Oh, no question.
And I think that tells me that they're in a situation where that's all they can do. I know people who work on maintenance staffs in some of the places that I work that tell me their whole health care plan is aspirin.
Yeah.
They got to take an aspirin and go to their second job trying to make ends meet. The chicken is a luxury. A hamburger is a rarity, and they never see steak or pork chops or anything like that. And they're struggling. And so if they're buying stuff on credit, like groceries, I know times are tight for them because that's the only outlet they have.
Yeah, and that's a very unfortunate situation. Times are tight, and it just takes so long to recover. I liken this to the pirate season is almost over here. I liken this to the relief pitcher who comes in the bottom of the ninth with the bases loaded and a 3-0 count against the hitter. That's not a good situation that you want to be in, because you do one thing wrong, you throw the ball to that batter, then the game's over, you walked in a winning run. That's not a good situation, and it takes time to recover from something like that.
All right, we're talking about the economy, Moody's Index, down-rating the U.S. credit rating, and much more. You have an opinion on it, then give us a call. Also, how's it going to affect the presidential elections? Our number is 412-333-PCNC. I'm Chris Moore. We're talking to Rob Wilson of Blazer Capital Management. We can have you join the conversation, too, when you dial 412-333-PCNC. Stay with us.